office.
Moneyline News Hour with Lou Dobbs, weeknight 6:30 Eastern on CNN.
It is Saturday, April 3rd. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to CNN Saturday Morning. I'm Natalie Allen at CNN Center in Atlanta.
And I'm Gene Randall in Washington. For our domestic viewers, Showbiz this weekend will not be seen at this hour, so we can bring you the latest on the strike against Yugoslavia. NATO is putting together a plan to expand its mission in the Balkans to include humanitarian help. Meanwhile, despite the continuing bombardment of Serb targets, NATO says Belgrade is still waging its campaign to drive ethnic Albanians out of Kosovo, and the refugees continue pouring into neighboring countries. NATO spokesman Jamie Shea says Yugoslav forces have driven nearly 300,000 people from Kosovo during the past 10 days. He says the alliance will send 6,000 Italian troops to Macedonia and Albania to aid humanitarian efforts.
We are also looking at a concept of operations for a NATO deployment in Albania to provide direct military assistance to the international relief organizations and the Albanian government. But this is a concept of operations. I anticipate decisions will be taken in the very near future, but we are still at the planning stage for such a NATO emergency force.
A setback for the refugees. Macedonia has announced it will accept no more expelled ethnic Albanians. Tens of thousands of Kosovar Albanians now are stranded at the Kosovo-Macedonia border.
NATO is declaring success in its first strike on targets in the heart of Belgrade. The full force of that strike was apparent in the light of day this morning. 2 Yugoslav government buildings are now little more than piles of smoking rubble, the work of 8 U.S. and British missiles fired from NATO ships at sea. The attack came around midnight. 2 explosions and several subsequent blasts rocked the city, sending bright orange flames into the night sky. The Pentagon says NATO's missiles struck at the core of Yugoslavia's campaign of ethnic cleansing against the Kosovar Albanians. The missiles fell on the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Serbia and the Yugoslav Ministry of Internal Affairs. Serbian television says one missile fell about 20 meters from a nearby Belgrade hospital. University Medical Center's maternity ward, the ward nearest the burning buildings, was evacuated. The hospital was untouched by the fire. Yugoslavia's foreign minister, meantime, insists 3 U.S. soldiers captured by Serb forces earlier this week are safe and secure. President Clinton is expected to focus on the soldiers' capture as well as the NATO campaign in his weekly radio address. We'll bring that to you live in just a few minutes. Now that NATO has, for the first time, struck central Belgrade, what is it like in the Yugoslav capital? Joining us by telephone from Belgrade is CNN's Brent Sadler. Brent.
Thanks, Natalie. Well, it's all very quiet here in the Yugoslav capital right now, but fires which raged overnight in the 2 Interior Ministry headquarters are still smouldering. The Yugoslav and Serbian ministries of the Interior now in ruins. A barrage of cruise missiles slammed into these buildings, a devastating message to Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic that NATO is prepared to carry out its threats to hit his chain of command. After surveying the carnage, Serbia's Interior Minister said NATO had committed a criminal act and that Serbs were unified, determined to save their country and their people. The authorities here say the scale of attack will further enrage Serbs, who were again staging a protest concert less than 2 miles from the central bomb site here in the city centre. The attacks also appear to be unifying Serbs more than ever, especially now that NATO has gone a step further in widening the campaign by hitting 2 government targets here. There is no indication the leadership in Belgrade is considering a change of policy towards Kosovo unless the bombing stops. Soon after the attack, Serbian television began showing pictures of central Belgrade aglow. The city was mostly asleep when the explosion shook the capital around 1 a.m. Belgrade time. Firefighters fought a losing battle to save the ministries. Infernos raged out of control, engulfing floor after floor, consuming everything within. The attack came precariously close to the city's University Medical Center. The blast shook buildings and terrified women and children who were seen on Serbian television being taken to bomb shelters. The maternity unit coped with a baby crisis, moving some 70 newborns to safety. Doctors and nurses here said they couldn't believe that NATO had aimed missiles so close to their medical facilities. Staff there said no one was lost or injured in the hospitals, and there were no reports of casualties from the destroyed ministries, which appear to have been cleared of personnel before the cruise missile struck. Brent Sadler, CNN, reporting live from Belgrade.
Here in Washington, the White House is closely monitoring the NATO operation. President Clinton will address that in his radio address shortly. Meanwhile, CNN's John King joins us from the White House North Lawn with the latest. John?
Gene, the president taped the radio address late last night after getting his latest update on the strikes in Yugoslavia. The president had signaled even before we knew of the strike in central Belgrade that the Allies would intensify the air campaign and go after key military installations in Yugoslavia. The White House has been a bit defensive because of the criticism that the NATO strikes have not stopped and perhaps, some say, have even exacerbated the plight of the ethnic Albanians on the ground in Kosovo. Now let's listen in as the president delivers his weekly radio address.
As we gather in our homes during this sacred week to observe Easter and Passover, let us take a moment to think about the plight of the people in Kosovo who have been forced from their homes by a campaign of violence and destruction, and who look to us for help and hope. The tragedy in Kosovo has been mounting for over a year now. Over the last 2 weeks, Serbian forces have intensified their attacks against innocent civilians there, leaving no doubt about the cold, clear goal of their leader, Slobodan Milosevic, to keep Kosovo's land while ridding it of its people. Nearly 1 out of every 3 people in Kosovo has been made homeless since the start of this conflict. Even before the recent surge, well over 250,000 people had been displaced. Every hour of every day, more arrive at Kosovo's borders, tired, hungry, shaken by what they have been through. Among them are elderly people who've lived their whole lives in peace with their neighbors, only to be told now to leave everything behind in minutes or to be killed on the spot. Among them are small children who've walked for miles over mountains, sometimes after watching their fathers and uncles and brothers taken from them and shot before their eyes. Some have been shelled by artillery on their long trek to safety. Many have had their identity papers and family records stolen and destroyed, their history in Kosovo erased, their very existence denied. Our nation cannot do everything. We can't end all suffering. We can't stop all violence. But there are times when looking away simply is not an option. Right now, in the middle of Europe, at the doorstep of NATO, an entire people are being made to abandon their homeland or die. Not because of anything they've done, but simply because of who they are. If there's one lesson we've learned in this century, it's that that kind of poison will spread, if not stopped. If there's one pledge that binds the past and future generations, it is that we cannot allow people to be destroyed because of their ethnic or racial or religious groups, when we do have the power to do something about it. Our military mission in Kosovo is a difficult and dangerous one, but it's necessary and right, and we must stand with all our NATO allies to see it through. Our goal is to exact a very high price for Mr. Milosevic's policy of repression and to seriously diminish his military capacity to maintain that policy. We also must open our hearts and our arms to the innocent victims of this conflict. This week, I authorized the expenditure of $50 million in emergency funds to support the relief effort and directed our military to do its part to get critical supplies to people in need. We'll work with the United Nations and with the many courageous volunteers working on the ground with non-governmental organizations from all around the world. You can help too. I urge you to call your local Red Cross or church-based charity and ask them how you can get involved. Together, we will provide food, water, and medicine, blankets, clothing, and shelter to Kosovar refugees. We'll remind the victims of this conflict that for all they have lost, they've not been abandoned or forgotten. European countries are helping as well. Kosovo's neighbors, Macedonia and Albania, are taking the refugees in despite the huge burden this places on these poor, struggling nations. So are Greece, Bosnia, and Bulgaria, showing there's more mercy than madness in the Balkans, more compassion than cruelty in this troubled region of the world. All of us want to provide for the refugees. All of us want to make it possible for them to return home. Let us do our part for all the innocent people whose lives have been shattered by this conflict. And let us give our thanks to our men and women in uniform who are risking their lives today for our ideals, our interests, and their lives. Let us keep in our prayers the 3 brave American servicemen now being held without justification in Belgrade, that they may return to us soon. Let us do what we can and what we must for peace to prevail, and let us stay the course till it does. Thanks for listening.
Even stronger words earlier today from another Allied leader, the British Prime Minister Tony Blair. He flatly promised that the airstrikes would continue until the Kosovo refugees could return home and live safely. Now, as the president prepares to leave for Camp David a little later today, his national security team at this hour meeting at the White House to assess the battle damage assessment from yesterday and to review the targets for the next day of the Allied strikes. Gene?
John, we should explain that is the sound of a heckler from behind you. But despite the heckling, when the president talks about the very high price for Mr. Milosevic's policy of repression, as he put it, should we read between the lines that last night's strikes in Belgrade were a graphic illustration of that increasingly high price?
The president even signaled so, Gene, yesterday. He promised the targeting would be more aggressive. There's a great deal of frustration here at the White House, across town at the Pentagon, and at NATO headquarters in Brussels that bad weather has prevented more aggressive targeting of key Yugoslav military installations, not only in Belgrade, but also on the ground in Kosovo. Administration officials saying they're being told, even though they've been told this before and then been frustrated, they say they are being told the weather due to clear in the days ahead, and they promise that when that happens, the American people and the worldwide audience will see a much more aggressive NATO military strikes. Still, though, a great deal of frustration and very hard to get a straight answer when you ask administration officials what is the criteria for ending the bombing, since Mr. Milosevic shows no signs of backing down. U.S. officials talking privately now of perhaps a NATO force that was designed as a peacekeeping force going in at some point as a security force to help those refugees return home. But first, they say, much more damage must be done to the Milosevic military machine. Gene?
John King at the White House. Thank you, John. Natalie?
Stay with CNN throughout this hour and the day for the latest on the strike against Yugoslavia. At noon Eastern, 9 Pacific, we'll have live coverage of a Pentagon news conference. And 1/2 hour later, we'll interview NATO spokesman Jamie Shea live from Brussels. And for even more coverage, log on to our website. Our internet address is cnn.com/Kosovo. And next here on CNN Saturday Morning, the latest headlines on the strike against Yugoslavia. We'll take you live to Macedonia for the latest on the refugee crisis. And is NATO's strategy against Belgrade working? Also ahead, we'll have news from the U.S. where women tortured inside this trailer home in New Mexico. New evidence may point to a gruesome truth. And later, April definitely is coming in like a lion as a blanket of white covers many parts of the country. Our national forecast is also ahead.
Lexus RX 300. Motor Trend Sport Utility of the Year. Fluid. Over any surface.
Got something large you gotta send someplace else? Call Packmail. We ship anything, anywhere.
What do we got?
Straight line.
Give me 300 now. Clear.
There's a better way to toast a sub. Quiznos oven-baked classics.
Good morning. This is the Farm Report. Pork bellies, wheat, and soy futures.
Where am I? Waking up is hard, wherever you are.
Good morning, sir.
But coffee helps. And cereal and fresh fruit. Ooh, that definitely helps. And before long,
He did it again. Unbelievable.
you're a human again. This town's not so bad. Complimentary breakfast and a great new frequency program. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
Sunday on CNN Newsstand.
The stories of nightmares that have become reality. CNN's Christian Amanpour goes behind the images and struggles of Kosovo refugees. Plus, Slobodan Milosevic. He's been called everything from a madman to a savior. But who really is the man behind the crisis in Kosovo? And a stand-up comic for God. An unorthodox Christian who's making religion hip to many Americans. CNN in Time, Sunday 10, 9 Central on CNN.
Tonight on Larry King Weekend, a special live edition with an update on the NATO strike against Yugoslavia. Former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev gives historical perspective on the crisis. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Now to the increasingly volatile refugee problem to which NATO is responding. Macedonia said today it is closing its border with Kosovo because it cannot absorb any more ethnic Albanians. An estimated 65,000 are stranded at a teeming border encampment where horrendous conditions are getting only worse. CNN's Mike Betcher is there. He joins us now. Mike.
The situation here, at best, is grim. I was at the refugee camp just up the road a little ways, and I would say at the rate of about 1 every 5 minutes, someone critically ill, a person very sick, put in stretchers, was brought out to a makeshift hospital. The situation is bad. People are living under plastic tarps or under wet blankets. There is food here. It's being distributed, but there needs to be more. There is water, but that is a concern as well, getting it distributed so that disease does not spread. The situation today is different from yesterday. Yesterday, more of the refugees were being evacuated by bus. That was the challenge for relief workers, to get the people out of here faster than they were arriving from Yugoslavia. It's not happening that way today. The big bottleneck appears to be registering these refugees. There are huge lines of hundreds, thousands of people trying to register so that they can be processed and hopefully be put on a bus to another refugee site where perhaps there are tents and better protection for these refugees. Now with me now is Paula Gaddini, who is with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Paula, what is the problem today in getting these refugees out of here? Yesterday they were moving about 60 buses. Today, much less. What happened?
Well, fortunately today we also have the development that there are no additional trains that have arrived. So yesterday we were trying to deal with the influx as fast as they were coming in, trying to get at least some of the people out. Today I think what we're trying to do is actually look at the situation and see if there's anything we can do now until we have some other campsites set up. So to keep some of the people here, but also to move them out as quickly as possible. It's simply that it's not moving as fast as we would hope it would be, and we have the capacity to move people much faster.
Are we on the verge of a health catastrophe here with these many refugees here out in the open?
Well, we have kind of a dual situation right now where, because of the cold, many of the people who are already vulnerable and weak, many had been already collapsing from fatigue and dehydration when they first arrived. Now what we're seeing is the cold weather conditions is just further debilitating those that are already vulnerable, especially infants and elderly. But however, the one good thing about the cold conditions is that epidemics such as cholera and other bacterial infections can be kept at bay. So for now, it isn't that there are any health hazards. However, if this condition continues and we have a situation with 65,000 people in the open persisting for days, we are going to be looking at health problems.
What is the solution? Finding other countries in Europe to take these refugees?
We have already started by today appealing to some of the southern European countries to take some of the burden off the hands of Macedonia and Albania. Macedonia and Albania are already two countries that are very much taxed, very sensitively balanced in the region, and this influx of this kind of number will change and will severely destabilize the entire region. So we have asked some of the European countries to go ahead and start opening their doors.
And it can't happen quickly enough for these thousands, tens of thousands of refugees. 65,000. Yesterday we were estimating 20,000. Now it's up to 65,000, perhaps more. This is Mike Betcher reporting live from the Yugoslav-Macedonian border.
British Prime Minister Tony Blair is predicting that Yugoslav leader Slobodan Milosevic soon will launch a diplomatic initiative. And he says any such effort by Belgrade to cement its gains in Kosovo must be rejected. Meanwhile, as NATO claims its air campaign is getting results, CNN's Jamie McIntyre reports Milosevic appears close to achieving his goals.
As promised, NATO took its bombing campaign to downtown Belgrade. 7 cruise missiles fired from a pair of U.S. warships reduced the federal and Serbian ministries of internal affairs to flaming rubble. The attacks assumed a new urgency because the latest U.S. intelligence reports from Kosovo indicate Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic may be close to accomplishing his goals of purging large numbers of ethnic Albanians, eliminating the Albanian elite, and mopping up the last of the rebel fighters. CNN has learned that a classified U.S. report concludes President Milosevic may be only days away from declaring victory and may be ready to call a ceasefire in a ploy aimed at halting the NATO attacks. The report suggests the Yugoslav leader may in fact be trying to cut a deal with Kosovar leader Ibrahim Rugova, who was seen on Serbian TV Thursday meeting with Milosevic in Belgrade. That would allow Milosevic to claim he has agreed to a separate peace deal with Rugova as head of an autonomous Kosovo, although by then the province would have been pacified and ethnically cleansed. The Pentagon says the headquarters buildings in downtown Belgrade were targeted because they control the forces that are responsible for what the U.S. calls ethnic cleansing in Kosovo. Other attacks by manned aircraft, including F-117 stealth fighters, had to be called off, officials say, because of some of the worst weather since the beginning of the bombing campaign. The persistent cloud cover has forced many NATO planes to return without dropping their bombs. But nevertheless, the Pentagon says the airstrikes are succeeding in choking off the Yugoslav army by cutting supply lines and destroying major fuel storage centers. And sources say the Pentagon is mulling a request to send the Army's ground-based anti-personnel missile system, known as ATACMS, to neighboring Albania or Macedonia.
And sources say NATO is about to add the U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt to its arsenal, along with 3 more cruise missile-firing ships and a submarine. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, The Pentagon.
Coming up, another exodus. Cold, hungry, and exhausted, a journey from Mexico to California turns tragic for a group of illegal immigrants. The rest of the story when CNN Saturday Morning continues.
I will not march blindly into the fluorescent light of Monday morning to a job I do not love. I will not go with the flow. I am not a Stepford worker. I am not a carbon copy. I will call this number before tomorrow because I refuse to work for the weekend, even if everybody's working for the weekend. Today, I will find a job that works for me, where a pat on the back doesn't involve a knife. Today, I will hit the snooze button one less time. Today is the first day of the rest of my career.
If you have experience in technology, accounting, or legal or clerical skills, find out how Interim can help you. Call 1-800-A-CAREER.
Before you choose a vacation, ask yourself some questions. Ireland 9-day self-drive vacation including airfare and accommodation, $905. Contact your travel agent or for a free vacation kit, call 1-800-SHAMROCK. Ireland, awaken to a different world.
I'm watching you, CNN.
News from here in the United States. Federal immigration officials have rescued more than 100 shivering Mexicans who were caught in a snowstorm in Southern California. At least 9 illegal immigrants died in the storm, including 2 on the Mexican side of the border. Officials say the poorly clothed group appeared to be caught off guard by the storm and its frigid temperatures. The Immigration Service is blaming immigrant smugglers for dispatching the immigrants unprepared.
Federal agents and state police in New Mexico say they have finished collecting evidence in a bizarre case of rape and sexual torture. The case centers around an Elephant Butte couple, and the torture police say they committed on women in their mobile home. Here's CNN's Jim Hill.
Suspect David Parker Ray allegedly called it his toy box, a trailer filled with restraining and sexual torture devices, including a medical examination table. Authorities say it's been moved intact to Santa Fe, New Mexico for more detailed investigation.
We're better able to process the evidence contained in that trailer under some very controlled conditions.
One source close to the case says investigators also found volumes of detailed notes and documents which Ray allegedly kept concerning the torture of women. The source also says some 100 videotapes and at least one video camera were found in Ray's home, along with numerous photos. At least one tape reportedly shows the torture of a woman. One source said missing person cases from throughout New Mexico are being gathered and reviewed, including what the source called a collection of files from Albuquerque police. Ray and his live-in girlfriend, Cynthia Lee Hendy, are jailed on charges they kidnapped and tortured 2 women during the past 2 months. They are the only known suspects so far.
There is a very real possibility of additional suspects.
Ray reportedly has a grown son and daughter. One official close to the investigation says both were interviewed by authorities Thursday, but were not arrested. The FBI and New Mexico State Police say they have not located additional victims, but they say evidence indicates there may well be many. Dogs trained to find bodies have been brought in, but investigators say they have not determined yet whether Ray killed any of his victims. Nonetheless, authorities say they have well over 1,000 pieces of evidence to examine and many leads to follow in what may be a long investigation. Jim Hill, CNN, Elephant Butte, New Mexico.
The FBI has apparently taken the search for this country's best-known atheist and 2 family members to Texas. Reportedly based on evidence, agents are looking for Madeline Murray O'Hare on a ranch about 100 miles west of San Antonio. O'Hare vanished along with her son and granddaughter in 1995. 32 years earlier, her U.S. Supreme Court case led to a ban on prayer in public schools. The FBI is not talking about its search.
There's more ahead on CNN Saturday morning. Denver shivers through an April blast of winter. Orland Sydney has the forecast for the West and the rest of the nation.
Let's move it. We got 300 miles to go. You look great. We gotta go. Come on, move it, move it, move it. Come on, honey, got them all. Let's go.
At Comfort Inn and Comfort Suites, we know you're anxious to get where you're going. But we do serve a complimentary breakfast every morning, in case you're not as anxious as you thought. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
Do you have to cope with frequent urination and the urgent need to urinate day and night? So do lots of men over 50. Only your doctor can tell if these symptoms are due to an enlarged prostate and not a more serious condition such as prostate cancer. If you have urinary symptoms and are diagnosed with an enlarged prostate, ask your doctor about Flomax, a prescription medicine specifically designed to help relieve these symptoms. Call now for your free educational booklet plus a $5 rebate offer. The most common side effects of Flomax are a decrease in semen, stuffy nose, and dizziness. Also, a sudden decrease in blood pressure could occur upon standing, resulting in rare instances of fainting. So when starting Flomax, avoid situations where injury could result. Ask your doctor about possible drug interactions. Flomax, specifically designed to help relieve symptoms of an enlarged prostate. See your doctor for product information or call 1-888-532-1122.
Good morning. It is stormy across the Plain States and it's cold across the western United States. We've got a big storm system pushing its way eastward with showers and thunderstorms out ahead of it, stretching from Texas northward into Missouri. We have seen some severe weather so far this morning with flooding, even tornadoes, severe thunderstorm warnings reported all the way down into northern Texas. There is currently a severe thunderstorm watch in effect for Texas and just across the Red River into Oklahoma until 1 o'clock Central Time this afternoon. Had some snow yesterday in places like Scottsdale, Scottsdale? Record low temperature maximum yesterday, 59 degrees. The average is 82 degrees. As far as the average snow on April 2nd, it doesn't even register. But this is a golf course apparently out in the Scottsdale region where they didn't manage to tee off yesterday. It was just a little bit too cold to do that. We'll take a look at that storm system that has continued to work into the nation. Here is the area of low pressure, a little cold front riding out ahead of it. Here's our subtropical jet feeding in some moisture as well. Could be interesting to watch the potential for severe thunderstorms head a little bit further eastward today as we continue to see the daytime heating interact with this frontal system. Not a whole lot going on back to the west now. Most of the low has moved out. There's still some snow showers, though, scattered from the Four Corners region up into the eastern slopes of the Rockies. Down through the Pacific coast, we have a cold front system moving in as well. There's some rain and snow mixed along the coast of Oregon and Washington. Snowfall as you head on into the mountain regions. Take a look at these temperatures. This is the temperature profile you will see for the next 36 hours. Warm in the east, colder out to the west. Denver right now just about 22 degrees, 32 at Albuquerque. Salt Lake City coming in at 30. Look at the contrast in temperatures to Dallas and Houston. Down towards Corpus Christi, temperatures are in the 70s, 73 at Little Rock, even in the 60s up to Chicago. As our cold front system heads eastward today, watch the warm sector. That's the area between the cold front and the warm front, especially in the south. That's where we're going to see a best potential of severe thunderstorms. Don't look now, but there may be some more snow in your forecast on Sunday out to the west. We'll have more news after this break.
Sunday, he's been called a savior by some and a madman by others. But who really is the man behind the crisis in Kosovo? CNN and Times, Sunday.
Spyderco, for life's everyday adventures. Spyderco, easy-to-open pocket cutlery, so easy to use. Spyderco kitchen cutlery, exceptional cutting performance. Spyderco cutting tools with the trademark round hole. Ideal tools for the human adventure. Spyderco, crafted for life.
Wow! I heard people can take their car loan to Uleno and take 2% off their interest rate. Can that be true?
Yes, Jerry.
Well, what if their current rate was 9%? Will Uleno go 2% lower than that?
Yes, Jerry.
So how low will Uleno go?
Wheelie, wheelie, low, Jerry.
Those are some low rates. Uleno Credit Union, where everyone wins.
Business Unusual with Lou Dobbs, tonight, 8:30 on CNN.
And welcome back to this special edition of CNN Saturday Morning. I'm Natalie Allen in Atlanta.
And I'm Gene Randall in Washington. Style with Elsa Clench will not be seen at this hour, so we can bring you the latest on the strike against Yugoslavia. Here are the latest developments. NATO says its military forces will come to the aid of ethnic Albanian refugees, and the government's bearing the brunt of the massive Kosovo exodus. In the latest tally, the alliance placed the number of ethnic Albanians fleeing the province at 290,000 in the past 10 days. NATO's chief spokesman called the refugee crisis a demographic earthquake. Most heavily burdened, the governments of Macedonia, which is trying to close its borders, and Albania. NATO says it is moving to establish a military headquarters in the Albanian capital and camps and feeding stations in Macedonia. Yugoslavia blames the crisis on the NATO air campaign, but NATO says the exodus was planned by the Serbs as part of alleged ethnic cleansing of Kosovar Albanians. Meanwhile, NATO has taken the air campaign to the heart of Yugoslavia. For the first time, NATO missiles struck overnight in downtown Belgrade. Massive flames lit the skies above the command center for Yugoslav forces carrying out attacks in Kosovo. NATO says the cruise missiles struck both the Federal Yugoslav Command Center and the Serbian Central Command. An alliance spokesman says a strike 2 nights ago hit Belgrade Army headquarters and was most effective. British Prime Minister Tony Blair is pledging the alliance will defeat Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic.
We've now done a lot of damage to the Serb war machine, not just in terms of their air defenses, but their ammunition, their supply, their oil depots, attacking some of the command and control centers as we did last night. And tonight's raid, I think, was very successful from that point of view, last night's raid, and obviously we will carry on now.
Blair said the air campaign will not end until NATO's terms are complied with.
So let's get the latest now from the Pentagon. For that, we go live to CNN's Jean Meserve. Jean.
Natalie, NATO today trumpeting its strikes in central Belgrade, saying it will continue to strike Mr. Milosevic close and hard. NATO is promising a sustained air operation against the capital city and also against Yugoslav forces in the province of Kosovo. A decision is expected today on whether the U.S. aircraft carrier Roosevelt and its battle group will join NATO forces in the region. 4 ships in that battle group are capable of launching cruise missiles. It was cruise missiles that hit Belgrade yesterday. Lousy weather continues to limit bombing, but NATO officials insist if there is a break in the weather and if they have enough time, an air operation will be effective.
It's a snowball affair. A snowball begins in a small way, but as it goes down the mountain, it picks up more and more momentum, and eventually it becomes a very large and highly irresistible object. And I think we're seeing the same, that this air campaign is having a cumulative effect, and there will come a moment when the pressure simply reaches breaking point for President Milosevic and his military, and at that moment we will have the success that we've been looking for.
Military officials saying once again today that there is no planning underway for the use of ground forces. NATO spokesman Jamie Shea said in Brussels today, ground troops are not a panacea. They take time to gather, and we do not have time. And that is certainly true. NATO estimates if refugees continue to exit Kosovo at the current rate, the province will be more or less emptied in 10 to 20 days' time. NATO doing what it can to address the problem. It is sending 6,000 Italian troops to Albania to help protect relief workers, and we are told that some NATO troops are giving their barracks to refugees who do not have shelter. Jean Meserve, CNN, reporting live from the Pentagon.
In the Yugoslav Republic of Montenegro, a top official is playing down fears of a coup after initial talks with a newly Serb-appointed army commander. Serbia's tiny sister republic received a jolt this week when Belgrade announced the dispatch of a general with close ties to Yugoslav President Milosevic. NATO is warning of a growing threat of a Belgrade-engineered power grab. NATO is warning Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic, do not move against the government in Montenegro.
And Milosevic should know that if he decided to do something of that nature, as he has done before in Montenegro, he will be stopped.
NATO officials say they have evidence Milosevic is plotting a coup against Montenegrin President Milo Đukanović. Elected in 1997, Đukanović has pressed for democratic reforms and has refused to endorse Serb actions against Kosovo province. And he has declared his republic neutral in Yugoslavia's conflict with NATO. Milosevic clearly considers that a challenge to his authority.
As a first step, he has already replaced the army commander, General Martinovic, by a new general who can be relied upon to follow his orders.
If Milosevic does try to move into Montenegro, a former U.S. Air Force general says the alliance will know where to hit his forces.
I think the great advantage for NATO is it forces him to come up and put his most valuable assets in a formation that's easily attacked.
A Serb drive against Montenegro could bolster the argument for the introduction of NATO ground forces into Yugoslavia. But still no hint from NATO it is ready to consider that. Instead, at the Pentagon, an insistence that what's happened in the air campaign so far would help defeat a Milosevic move against Montenegro.
I think he would face intensified attacks that would focus on those particular forces. One of the advantages of trying to cut off lines of communication, fuel supplies, and attacking other targets needed to sustain forces is that it would make such a movement more difficult.
Maybe so, but Slobodan Milosevic already has shown he is prepared to face both the threat of Western military might and its use, and that is why hints of an assault on Montenegro are being taken so seriously.
Coming up on CNN Saturday, we'll look at the complex ethnic background of Yugoslavia and the war's fought over it.
Let's see, college in 4 years, costs up 40% over the next 5. Somebody do the math here.
It'd be great if our money would grow as fast as these kids. I can't believe
Will paying for college be as painful as this? Let's get rid of it.
Hey, that kid just dropped a pretzel? Because I like pretzels. I really like
We'll be able to help with their
I
education.
wonder if we should have put that money in a trust. Maybe we would have...
I hope she was kidding about college in Hawaii.
Thank you, Paine Weber. brings growth. That's the way it's been for America's electric co-ops and America's businesses and communities. We've always kept affordable power flowing steadily and reliably. Now, we're joining other local co-ops to form a nationwide alliance, Touchstone Energy, to ensure state-of-the-art technology and personalized service. It's the power of human connections. We are America's electric cooperatives.
The Mystery, a futuristic symphony by Alexei. Come, experience a journey of unheard sounds. Listen to a language that knows no borders. Hear the musical sound of a new millennium. The Mystery CD album, now available at Borders and other major stores nationwide. Also online retailers.
To fathom what's going on in Yugoslavia today, it is necessary to know something of its ethnic history, one that is steeped in conflict. Here's CNN's Jonathan Mann.
The word Yugoslavia, literally translated, means the land of the South Slavs. Land singular, Slavs plural, several nations sharing one state. That has been its culture and its curse, even before it was founded as a state in 1918, and certainly ever since. The worst horrors of Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo may evoke the years of World War II, but that war was immeasurably more brutal. To this day, Serbs who lived through it remember it in terror, when Croats known as Ustaše rivaled the Nazis elsewhere with their campaign to exterminate Jews, Gypsies, and Serbs. The Serbs had their own militiamen, the Chetniks, who fought the Croats and Muslims more furiously than they fought the Nazi occupiers. But there was a third force, the communist partisans, led by Josip Broz, Tito, who were the last left standing at war's end. The communists had long been the only political party that was not ethnically based. When peace finally came, their wartime slogan, brotherhood and unity, became the founding principle of the country they tried to recreate. Its 6 republics, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia, were all to be equal. Its people, of all faiths and origins, were to be equal as well. The anti-nationalist ideology of Yugoslavism became state policy. The state controlled the schools, media, and much of the culture of the country and spread its message widely. The memories of the murderous war years made many people eager to believe what the state was trying to teach them. Even so, Tito tried to contain the ethnic groups competing inside his country for his entire career. But he died in 1980. Nationalism survives. The idea of Yugoslavia is in ruins. Jonathan Mann, CNN.
As for the Yugoslav province at the heart of the current conflict, there's a new book out. It is entitled Kosovo, A Short History. And we're joined from our Boston bureau by the book's author, Noah Malcolm. He is a former newspaper columnist with expertise on the Balkan region and now teaches at Harvard. Professor Malcolm, thanks for joining us. Let's talk first about Kosovo and its importance to the people there in Yugoslavia. We just had a picture of a woman up, and I noticed her button read, Kosovo is Serbia. She apparently part of the rallies taking place within Yugoslavia. Help us understand why Kosovo is such a symbolic focus of Serbian nationalism.
Well, I think symbolic is the right word. It's symbolic for 2 particular reasons. One is that the headquarters of the Serbian Orthodox Church.
All right, let's see if we can get him back. Are we going to get him? No, we're not. All right, I apologize to our viewers, and we'll go back to Gene Randall in Washington.
And when we come back, what's ahead for the suspected creator of the Melissa virus? Stay with us.
Gather around and observe the age-old problem of people working the same old way.
He's running a marathon between the printer and the copier.
Another fact she can't read.
Sharing knowledge should be easier.
What can we do?
Go, tell them about the Xerox Document Center family and the free video.
Document centers are network digital copier printers. Just point and click. And right from your desk, you can
Print, fax, copy, even collate.
Only one trip down the hall.
It's all in the video.
Document centers are upgradable, so you can add features.
I know.
You can easily scan a document, store it, or change it on your computer, and send it
Anywhere in the world using your network.
Or through the internet.
How did you know that?
I watched the video.
Smart people. Curious clothing. Call now for your free video. Call 1-800-320-0845.
Tonight on Larry King Weekend, a special live edition with an update on the NATO strike against Yugoslavia. Former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev gives historical perspective on the crisis. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
I'm watching you, CNN.
We've re-established contact with our Boston bureau, so we're going to go back to Noel Malcolm, who just wrote a book on a short history of Kosovo. Our apologies, Mr. Malcolm. You were telling us why Kosovo has such a symbolism for Serbian nationalism. Please continue.
Yes, the symbolism is based especially on the fact that the headquarters of the Orthodox Church are in Kosovo, and on the famous medieval Battle of Kosovo of 1389. And most Serbs have been brought up to believe that because of the Battle of Kosovo, there is some special historical link between all Serbs and this sacred Serbian land. But that doctrine is really a modern invention. I mean, there were folk songs about the Battle of Kosovo, but the idea that this creates some special Serbian identity, that it's a key to Serbian nationhood, was invented by 19th century ideologists.
So
Again, these are symbolic matters. They're very different matters from the realities of modern politics and modern demography.
So you're saying much of what bolsters Serbian nationalism is based on a myth?
It's based on an ideology that developed certain historical facts and gave them a significance which originally they didn't have. I mean, this is nothing special to Serbs. Many countries have done this with their history, but in the Serbian case, it happened to focus on Kosovo. But it's played an important part, because during the 20th century, they couldn't justify Serb rule over Kosovo on straightforward ethnographic lines, because it always had an Albanian majority since they conquered it in 1912. So they had to find a justification somewhere else. And that justification increasingly was based on these quasi-historical claims.
So with that, these people in Yugoslavia grow up learning about this. What is the long-term solution for Kosovo? Is it independence? Is there any chance for any kind of partition of Kosovo?
I think the only long-term solution is independence. I think the logic of the NATO action now requires that they drop the Rambouillet proposal of mere autonomy. It will make no sense to reconquer Kosovo to allow the people back in and then to tell them that they must go back under the rule of Belgrade. So independence is now the only logical solution. But in any case, partition, I think, would set a very dangerous precedent. There is no justification for partition. If you look at the ethnic map of Kosovo as it was, the northern part of Kosovo was just as much an Albanian inhabited area as the southern part. And it sets a dangerous precedent if you start drawing completely new lines on the map instead of sticking to the lines that already exist.
Noel Malcolm, thanks for joining us again. Your book is Kosovo, A Short History. Thank you. Now to Gene.
Well, it didn't take long to solve the mystery surrounding a new computer virus. A trail of cyber clues led to a man in New Jersey. A man investigators say unleashed an email bug on millions. CNN's Gary Tuckman has a report.
Smiling in his mugshot, David Smith of New Jersey, the alleged creator of the so-called Melissa virus, charged with the felony interruption of public communication, now free on a $100,000 bond. Smiling at a news conference, investigators talking about their satisfaction in arresting him.
No matter how smart you may be in this high-tech world, law enforcement is one step ahead.
Authorities say the 30-year-old Smith is the man who originated the malicious chain letter that came in the form of an email that read, "Here is that document you asked for. Don't show anyone else." When the user clicked on the attached document file, web addresses for porn sites appeared. and the infected document was then sent to the first 50 addresses in the user's address book. It spread exponentially across the internet. Investigators say Smith used a pirated America Online account to do his work, and it was information from AOL that led to the arrests.
We were actually able to take it from America Online to the access point into America Online and to identify the actual phone line that was used to gain access to America Online.
Smith lives in an apartment in Aberdeen Township, New Jersey, where they say he created the virus. He faces the possibility of 40 years in prison. Many of his neighbors say he kept to himself.
I just seen him once in a while go in and out of the house.
Authorities say Smith is a network computer programmer for a business that does subcontracting for AT&T.
In terms of the number of systems infected, millions of computers were impacted. The damage from a financial standpoint was very high in the sense that we had many customers that had hundreds, literally hundreds of workers working over the weekend to prevent the spread of the virus.
While David Smith is free on bail, he is not prohibited from using a computer, although his has been confiscated as evidence. Gary Tuckman, CNN, Trenton, New Jersey.
Stay with us. When we come back, a gentle, timely reminder about time.
Promise you'll call me Captain.
I will, I promise.
I will be with you. If it takes a long time, no matter where you go, I will be with
A promise is a promise. Wherever you are and whatever you do, Allianz with its global partners is the power beside you.
The biggest movies, the best movies, only one place, HBO.
Attention! Please pardon this interruption, but we're presenting an offer from Nasonex. A coupon for a free 1-month trial. For information and a coupon for a free 1-month trial, call 1-800-320-8100. Talk to your doctor to find out whether Nasonex is right for you. The call and the offer are free, so call today. 1-800-320-8100.
It is that time of year again when the sun shines a little brighter, a little later, starting tomorrow. Daylight saving time returns at 2 a.m. Sunday. That's when everyone needs to turn your clocks forward 1 hour. Of course, you don't have to get up then to do it. At the same time, safety officials say it's a good time to also replace the batteries in your smoke detector. So got a couple things that are pretty important to do tomorrow. For now, let's check the weekend forecast. Some trouble in Texas. Here's Orlin.
Oh, that's right. We've got big thunderstorms moving currently through the Dallas-Fort Worth area, really right along I-35. We're seeing some very, very heavy thunderstorms along and to the west of the highway. Head to the north, you also see strong storms around Tulsa, continuing through the northeastern or northwestern portion of Arkansas. Earlier now, we did have severe thunderstorm watches in effect here. There still is a severe thunderstorm watch in effect from about Austin up to Dallas, and that will be in effect until 1 p.m. Central Time today. This is where we look for the area of severe weather to be today. Could see up to 3 inches of rain in some of the heavier thunderstorms. Most areas will see 1/4 to 1/2 to maybe 1 inch. Head to the north, though, of this low pressure system, and what you'll pick up is some pretty good snow right in the area where the temperature changes. Could see up to 1 foot of new snow across portions of Nebraska. Temperatures right now will be in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and that's where they'll stay across most of the west. Warming to the 60s, 70s, and 80s. 80s for most of the east, and we'll continue that trend even tonight, even though it's not quite as pronounced, the difference. You'll see 10 and 20-degree temperatures across most of the Rockies. Some of the coastal regions will be in the 30s, 40s probably around San Diego. Warming tomorrow, right back to where we were today. A little bit cooler across the deep south. You'll be in the 70s rather than the 80s. Gene?
Thanks, Orlin. When we come back, a teenager's first-hand account of the horrors of ethnic cleansing in Kosovo.
Writing to you, just from my balcony, I can see people running with suitcases, and I can hear some gunshots.
A young Kosovar's words delivered on the internet.
Sunday, he's been called a savior by some and a madman by others. But who really is the man behind the crisis in Kosovo? CNN and Times, Sunday.
TCI.
Classic movies.
Well, you just gotta quit looking at me like I was George Washington, Babe Ruth, and Florence Nightingale all rolled into one.
Icon, legend, or just plain movie star. Through the years, John Wayne's been a lot of things to a lot of people, but he's never been a day of the week, till now.
From now on, consider Wednesday to be Wayne's Day.
Dennis Quaid hosts a different Duke picture every John Wayne's Day at 5. TCI brings you the best of Hollywood on AMC.
Now you see him, now you don't.
The Northwest's best selection of Plymouth Voyagers and Neons are moving fast at Bob Lanfear's Beaverton Chrysler Plymouth on Canyon Road. Over 250 Chrysler and Plymouth minivans, including Town and Country, and Voyagers from just $13,595. 99 Plymouth Neons for just $99.95.
Nobody's got a better selection.
The Voyagers and Neons are moving fast at Bob Lanfear's Beaverton Chrysler Plymouth on Canyon Road. Just by Bob.
Been there all along. Ray Reese, Friday Oldsmobile.
Wow! I heard people can take their car loan to Uleno and take 2% off their interest rate. Can that be true?
Yes, Jerry.
Well, what if their current rate was 9%? Will Uleno go 2% lower than that?
Yes, Jerry.
So how low will Uleno go?
Wheelie, wheelie, low, Jerry.
Those are some low rates. Uleno Credit Union, where everyone wins.
Morning news, weekdays 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on CNN.
This is CNN.
Messages full of fear are making their way through email connections and
get to. What's happening there is that the Albanian government is trying as fast as it can to transport them out to other parts of Albania that are better able to cope. And there are a few agencies with a few boxes of dried foods and other things in their warehouses, but not the mass kind of food and other facilities and things that they need to cope with this. What we've heard, and I think you've heard it today, is that NATO is saying that they're going to deploy its resources, their resources, to try to help with this situation. But people here, officials here, are saying they need an airlift and they need a helicopter shuttle from the main town up to this border area. Natalie?
Christiane, so are children and the elderly still having to sleep in the elements each night there?
Absolutely, and it's truly tonight bitterly cold. I mean, I'm shivering and I'm properly dressed. These people are coming over with virtually, so thin clothing and some blankets and things. And there are newborns out here and infants. And of course, they're tired when they come over. This is the worst time for them. And here at the border, there simply aren't the resources to cope for them at a time when they need it most. I mean, they're getting a few blankets handed out. They're getting, even adults are getting pots of baby food handed to them. And the children are getting high-protein biscuits, but they're still having to spend the night in the open.
Christiane Amanpour, live from Albania. Up next here, we'll talk with CNN's Brent Sadler. He's in Belgrade. We're right back.
Good morning. This is the Farm Report. Pork bellies, wheat, and soy futures.
Where am I? Waking up is hard, wherever you are.
Good morning, sir.
But coffee helps.
And cereal and fresh fruit. Ooh, that definitely helps. And before long,
He did it again! Unbelievable!
you're a human again. This town's not so bad. Complimentary breakfast and a great new frequency program. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
On Evans, Novak, Hunt, and Shields, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger discusses the NATO strike against Yugoslavia. Today, 5:30 Eastern on CNN.
Spyderco, for life's everyday adventures. Spyderco, easy-to-open pocket cutlery. So easy to use. Spyderco kitchen cutlery. Exceptional cutting performance. Spyderco cutting tools with the trademark round hole. Ideal tools for the human adventure. Spyderco, crafted for life.
Wow! I heard people can take their car loan to Uleno and take 2% off their interest rate. Can that be true?
Yes, Jerry.
Well, what if their current rate was 9%? Will Uleno go 2% lower than that?
Yes, Jerry.
So how low will Uleno go?
Wheelie, wheelie, low, Jerry.
Those are some low rates. Uleno Credit Union, where everyone wins.
Morning News, weekdays 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on CNN.
As we've been telling you, for the first time, Operation Allied Force has struck at the heart of the Yugoslav capital. 2 government buildings went up in flames overnight as explosions rocked Belgrade. The Pentagon says the targets were headquarters for the Serb forces involved in the ethnic cleansing campaign in Kosovo. For the latest, CNN's Brent Sadler joins us by phone from Belgrade. Brent.
Thanks, Natalie. Well, night has fallen here in the Yugoslav capital, and it is all quiet. The attack last night happened about 1 a.m. local time, and certainly residents of the Yugoslav capital could clearly see these 2 government buildings well aglow. And this morning we saw pictures on Serbian television showing that they had been razed to the ground. Now, in terms of reaction, we were able to get about on the streets of Belgrade today to see how people were reacting to the heavy strike against the city centre, the first strike against the capital itself since NATO's bombing campaign began. And you'll see from these pictures that various themes are now emerging throughout the capital. The graphics industry here is very busy designing badges which illustrate targets. People here say that they feel they are now targets of NATO aggression. Obviously, various other pictures of importance and drawings and paintings. They're all really being built together to show that Serbs are unified and that the attacks against the capital further inflame Serb outrage, and that there is a feeling, they say here, of growing Serb unity. Now, it's also today a very important religious feast called Verbica in Yugoslavia, and it is a day when people pay their respects to the Serbian Orthodox Church, particularly the children. It is a day when parents take their children to various churches throughout the country. Here in Belgrade, young people lighting candles, praying for peace, they say, hoping that the NATO bombing campaign will come to a halt so that peace negotiations can resume. In fact, the Patriarch of the Serbian Orthodox Church, Patriarch Pavle, has appealed several times for the bombing to stop to allow diplomatic activity to be resumed. Natalie.
And also, Brent, do you expect to have any reaction from Belgrade over what we're hearing out of NATO and Brussels, that the terms might be changing just a bit for the end of this campaign, that Slobodan Milosevic must withdraw all troops from Kosovo, and that refugees be allowed to return before this bombing campaign is over, and that it now seems that any political agreement such as Rambouillet might be a longer term for now? Expect any reaction from Belgrade on this tonight?
No, I mean, it's too early, I think, given that we've just heard that briefing from the NATO spokesman to hear what the Yugoslav authorities might have to say. They've been sticking quite firmly to their stated position, which is that they are happy to continue negotiations. They say they want a peaceful solution for Kosovo, for the ethnic Albanian refugees to return to their homes, and for there to be a fair and equitable peace agreement. They've always said all along that they wanted peace, but they were not going to be railroaded, they say, into a peace deal they couldn't live with as far as Kosovo was concerned. Not just the ethnic Albanians, but the Serbs and other minorities. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not there is any recognition here that there is any changing in NATO's attitude to what might happen next. Natalie.
Brent Sadler on the phone with us from Belgrade. Now to Gene in Washington.
NATO officials say if the movement of refugees continues at its current pace, the entire ethnic Albanian population could be gone from Kosovo in as little as 10 days. The situation has become such a strain on neighboring Macedonia, officials there say they may be forced to close the border with Kosovo. CNN's Matthew Chance has more on a bad situation that is getting worse.
Tens of thousands of Kosovars hungry and exposed on the Macedonian frontier. After a night in the freezing rain with no shelter, the situation is already bleak. And despite the efforts of the small aid community here, the sheer number of refugees now crossing from Kosovo is overwhelming. These people are desperate, hungry and cold, says this local aid volunteer. Worse still, he says, they're starting to die. With only a handful of medical teams on the ground and medicine in short supply, doctors are faced with a situation they're describing as a catastrophe. The few hospital tents are filled with victims of trauma and simple exhaustion. I ache all over my body, says this woman. I'm losing my breath and dying. With so many people in this condition, it's a struggle keeping any of them alive. Aid workers say overnight, 11 people died, mostly the old and very young. And as conditions deteriorate, doctors say that figure may rise. With unofficial estimates of the number of refugees now at over 70,000 in Macedonia, the authorities here are calling for the international community to take in some of the Kosovars now on Macedonian soil. Some are being transported to camps elsewhere in the country, but the vast majority of these people have simply nowhere to go. As we approach the 21st century, it's hard for anyone here to believe we're seeing this kind of suffering in the heart of Europe. But these images will long be remembered, whether or not these people can ever return to their homes. Matthew Chance, CNN, on the Yugoslav-Macedonian frontier.
And when we return, more on the military might, CNN's Martin Savage reports from the Adriatic on stealth technology on the high seas.
The stealthy design goes down right to some of the smallest of details.
It is no ordinary naval destroyer. That's coming up right after this.
All it took was one drop. To cause a ripple that caused a wave that caused the whole world to take notice. Jacobs Creek, Australia's top drop.
It's all about flavors of foods and places and people. It's about textures and shapes and sights and sounds. It's San Antonio, one place where many cultures somehow weave themselves together into a rich, vibrant tapestry with beguiling grace and charm. Give us a call and we'll send you a wealth of free information. Then come and discover it is magic. It is extraordinary and it's pure San Antonio.
I believe I can call. I think I'll use the phone in the hall.
I call my friends just to say hi.
With 5 cent Sundays from MCI.
My Space Jam buddies and I stay in close touch with MCI's 5 cent Sundays.
Just 5 cents a minute. Every minute. Every Sunday.
Along with low rates all week long. Call 1-800-SUNDAYS to become an MCI customer.
I believe I can call.
When planning your next vacation, call the expert, your AAA travel agent, for an uncompromising escape with Holland America West Tours, AAA's choice for Alaska cruise and tour packages, where right now Alaska vacations start at this great low price. AAA also offers members exclusive extras on Holland America West Tours cruises and tours. For details, call 1-800-374-1106.
Travel with someone you
AAA Travel Services.
Imagine this is Florida, and that's Walt Disney World, SeaWorld, Universal Studios, Epcot Center, and this is Kissimmee St. Cloud, offering the closest and most affordable accommodations in the middle of Central Florida's best attractions. Call 1-800-711-KISS, and we'll send you a free vacation guide with information on affordable hotels and campgrounds. If you can stay here, why stay anywhere else? Kissimmee St. Cloud, location is our biggest attraction.
I'm watching you, CNN.
A key part of the sea-based element in Operation Allied Force is the USS Gonzales, an American Navy destroyer in the Adriatic. It is one of a new class of ships designed to avoid detection. CNN's Martin Savage reports from aboard the Gonzales.
Viewed from the air, the USS Gonzales might seem impossible to miss. But try and view the guided missile destroyer on radar, and it's possible you just might. You see, the Gonzales was built from the keel up to be a stealth ship.
There's no such thing as an invisible ship, but we can work within the laws of physics to try and help ourselves out. You'll notice, looking at the top side of the ship, that everything tends to be very angular.
Employing the same technology the Air Force uses to make its stealth fighters and bombers hard to spot on radar, the U.S. Navy worked to do the same with its new Arleigh Burke class of destroyers, all 9,000 tons of them. Almost every part of the ship's superstructure is angled in some way to reflect away rather than return an enemy's radar signal. It's the return that gives a ship away.
The stealthy design goes down right to some of the smallest of details. The lifelines, for example, on an older vessel would be 1-inch poles. Here, there's steel cable covered with rubber. The stanchions set at an angle in the deck and diamond shaped.
Items on the ship's exterior that can't be reshaped are instead covered with a special rubber coating that absorbs radar energy. That even includes the ship's gong. But it's not just a ship's shape that can give it away. So can heat, especially from its engines.
What we want to do is reduce the infrared signature that's put off by the ship's exhaust system. We have the boundary layer infrared suppression system, which brings air from outside the ship into the exhaust system, mixes it in with the exhaust, reduces the temperature, and it reduces the ability of a heat-seeking missile.
The Gonzales also has a special system that uses air bubbles to greatly cut back the destroyer's noise as it passes through the ocean, making it tough to find with sonar. The end result, in war games in which the Gonzales had to penetrate enemy defenses to strike a prime target, the destroyer has a perfect record of kills.
We have completed 2 different exercises as we work through what we call the inter-deployment training cycle. And the ship, during those exercises, was able to, as an opposing force, go against the opposite force and sneak up on them, basically, undetected.
Aboard the USS guided missile destroyer Gonzales, when it comes to possible detection by a hostile force, out of sight and out of mind is the best policy. Martin Savage, CNN, aboard the USS Gonzales in the Adriatic.
One of the main staging areas of the NATO military action against Yugoslavia is Aviano Air Base in Italy. About a third of the aircraft being used in the military action against Yugoslavia are based in Aviano, and CNN's Bill Delaney is following developments from there today. Bill.
Natalie, a day of very intermittent activity here since very early this morning. Flights just every 2 or 3 hours, usually just 1 or 2 or 3 strike aircraft leaving, sometimes complemented around the same time by radar jamming and surveillance aircraft. But for the most part, the pattern of the past few days has held here. Very patchy flying from Aviano Air Force Base in northern Italy. Now, the sun is going down here. That's typically when the activity picks up. But so far, we're not even hearing that loud whine that typically means strike aircraft are beginning to taxi out onto the tarmac, preparing to fly into Yugoslavia. We're not hearing that, just hearing the propellers of some presumably C-130s over there at the airbase. Very patchy activity here, no doubt, presumably down to the weather in the Balkans. They're simply not able to fly as many aircraft out of here as presumably they would like to. One thing that did not happen today as well, we were expecting as many as 24 stealth F-117 aircraft to come in here to bulk up the 150 or so aircraft already here. those stealth fighters have apparently gone to Germany instead. Now, the only novelty today, if you will, Natalie, a gathering of a few hundred protesters. Now, all day long here at Aviano, the police presence grew. It became more difficult than usual to get into the Air Force Base here. More roadblocks than in the past few days as police braced for what they thought might be a pretty large demonstration. Well, the protesters did turn out, but only a couple of hundred, mostly Italians, some leftist groups, anarchist groups, some Christian groups. They gave some speeches protesting the NATO airstrikes, but for the most part, what had thought to be perhaps a demonstration that might amount to some trouble here was quite quiet. And as we go into evening now here, as the sun goes down, as I said, remains quite quiet here. Still only intermittent activity here at Aviano Air Force Base in northern Italy. Bill Delaney, CNN, reporting live from Aviano in northern Italy.
When we come back, we'll return to Brussels for more on what some may see as NATO's evolving strategy on Yugoslavia. Stay with us.
Join the fun of Singapore's Millennia Mania celebrations anytime from June 1999 to August 2000, and you may win a free return vacation. There'll be one lucky winner every day for 458 days.
Let's move it. We got 300 miles to go.
You look great. We gotta go.
Come on, move it, move it, move it.
Come on, honey. Got them all. Let's go.
At Comfort Inn and Comfort Suites, we know you're anxious to get where you're going. But we do serve a complimentary breakfast every morning, in case you're not as anxious as you thought. It's more than a room. It's comfort.
When planning your next vacation, call the expert, your AAA travel agent, for an uncompromising escape with Holland America West Tours, AAA's choice for Alaska cruise and tour packages, where right now Alaska vacations start at this great low price. AAA also offers members exclusive extras on Holland America West Tours cruises and tours. For details, call 1-800-374-1106.
Travel with someone you trust.
AAA Travel Services.
40 years ago, we started this business. 10 years ago, our sons wanted to help. Last year, our daughter decided to join. Our whole family is in the business. How do we make sure the business stays in our family?
At Lincoln Financial Group, we provide clear, understandable business succession planning to help you preserve the work of a lifetime. Lincoln Financial Group, clear solutions in a complex world.
We're going back to NATO headquarters now, and CNN's Jim Clancy, who is in Brussels. Jim, give us the headline as you see it and what you heard Jamie Shea say today in Brussels, the spokesperson for NATO.
Well, Gene, as we look at the situation, it's very clear in a brief statement here that NATO has adjusted its goals in this Allied military bombing campaign. What they are saying now is very different from what they were saying just a few days ago, even a few weeks ago. Instead of Slobodan Milosevic, the president of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, having to sign on to the Rambouillet peace accord that was worked out by international mediators in France, aiming to settle the conflict in Kosovo with an autonomy plan and international or NATO-led peacekeepers. What the NATO headquarters is saying now is quite different. It says that term number one, the federal government of Yugoslavia must cease all combat operations against the Kosovars and withdraw all of its forces. Number two, it must agree to conditions or to
an area of operations for an international peacekeeping force, arrangements for that force to move into place in Kosovo to guarantee the safe return of all of the refugees. Absent in this list of demands to halt the bombing is any references to a long-term political settlement, as Rambouillet was. Of course, there are elements of Rambouillet that in any long-term settlement would still come into play, but at the same time, they could be, it would seem, renegotiated. There are some elements of that agreement that are of interest to Yugoslavia, specifically the disarming of the KLA and its other units, rebel units, in Kosovo. So here, a very basic shift that would seem on the surface to be aimed at diffusing the current humanitarian crisis across the Balkans that has been caused by the ethnic cleansing, in the words of NATO, that is going on inside Kosovo right now, a situation that many argue has been escalated, aggravated by the NATO bombing campaign. NATO saying very clearly, Gene, that these are the new goals, these are the adjusted goals, and they do not include signing up to a long-term political settlement. They do very clearly call for the federal government of Yugoslavia to withdraw its troops and allow an international peacekeeping force to move in. Now, that force, Gene, could also include Russians, Ukrainians, other nations more sympathetic, perhaps, to Belgrade. Gene?
So, Jim, a NATO force, but expanded to include those who might be friendlier with Belgrade.
I think the way to describe it is a NATO-led force, very much like SFOR that's operating in Bosnia. That kind of force, multinational, which could be more acceptable to Belgrade.
All right, Jim, stand by for a moment. Let's go to the White House to John King. John, how is the administration likely to react to all this?
Well, Gene, what NATO officials saying publicly today in Brussels is what the White House has been saying publicly since day one of the bombing. 12 days ago, the White House said it knew that President Slobodan Milosevic would never sign the exact Rambouillet Accords, that he would have to, as a face-saving measure is the term they use here, sign something different. Their language has been from day one that he has to agree to a ceasefire, pull out his troops, and agree to the framework of Rambouillet, including autonomy for the Serbs and a NATO-led peacekeeping force. They also say that from the very beginning, throughout the Rambouillet negotiations, I just checked moments ago with a senior official here, that it has always been envisioned that it would be a NATO-led force, not exclusively a NATO force. Gene?
John, what's happened to the rhetoric that there would be no use of NATO troops, including American troops, unless there was an agreement signed by both sides?
Well, that is the biggest shift underway. Over recent days, we've heard talk of private discussions within NATO about creating some sort of an enclave. These troops were to be called peacekeeping forces. Now, more and more, we're hearing that they would be called more a security force, that if you could get the refugees back in, there would have to be a long-term military deployment led by NATO to guarantee the safety of the Kosovo refugees. The United States has agreed to that, although publicly White House officials still say this would be a peacekeeping force. Obviously, there is no clear requirement that President Milosevic sign a peace agreement before NATO would do this, but they do insist here that he would have to pull out his troops, have to sign a ceasefire, and embrace not only autonomy for the Kosovar Albanians, but the acceptance of that NATO-led force.
Jim Clancy, let's talk about the timing here. What do you suppose is the most important element of the equation? Is it NATO's frustration that Milosevic has not buckled under yet to NATO's might, or utter dismay at the refugee situation, which grows worse by the hour?
Gene, I think it's obviously the latter. I don't think they expected President Slobodan Milosevic to cave in easily, but they never expected, I don't think, to see this many refugees. And I think that as they look at their intelligence information, today they were predicting there was between 100,000 and 300,000 more Kosovars heading for the exits of the troubled province. And they look at that problem and they realize that there is a lot of instability, a lot of cost, and frankly, a lot of human suffering attached with that. They want to stay closely linked with that humanitarian goal of easing that suffering and seeing these people return home. Now, one point, and we should make this, the difference between what we were hearing there from John King and what we're hearing here from Brussels, I don't know whether it's just in the statement or whether it is a difference in fact. There is nothing in the statement released here from NATO today that would suggest there has to be an agreement by the government in Belgrade to autonomy for the Kosovar Albanians for Kosovo province in all of this. Very clear here, just 2 points. 1, pull out your forces. 2, allow an international peacekeeping force to come in. Gene?
John, the administration has talked recently even in terms of the Serbs losing their moral authority to claim Kosovo province.
Well, the White House has said that as a matter of policy, that it is the U.S. policy that Kosovo remains part of Yugoslavia, remains part of Serbia. But at the same time, they've said as a matter of fact, it will be very difficult for these two factions to live side by side. But on the point Jim was just making, senior officials here tell us that they would have to agree, that President Milosevic would have to agree to autonomy for the Serbs as part of any agreement to end the bombing.
John and Jim, let me ask you each the same question. We have heard a consistent line since day one of Operation Allied Force, the strikes against Serb targets, that everyone always knew this was going to be a very long campaign. It would not be easy. But is anyone admitting that there is disappointment or surprise that Slobodan Milosevic has not caved in to this point, despite the number of bombs and missiles used so far, John?
Well, the great disappointment here has been about the weather. They say there would be a lot more bombs and missiles used if the weather were not so bad over Yugoslavia. No one here, at least publicly and privately, say they're surprised that President Milosevic has tried to hold out. They say they expected that. They had hoped to punish him a lot more, a lot sooner.
And Jim Clancy, was it hope or was it expectation that Milosevic could be coaxed before this point into going back to a more peaceful stature?
Well, I think NATO officials here are very realistic about their relationship with Slobodan Milosevic. They know his political predicament, they know his nationalist stand, and they realize that once this began, it was going to be a very difficult, a very long and arduous campaign in order to try to reach some kind of a settlement. That they were going to have to do something that was out of the ordinary, something that NATO officials say they didn't want to see happening on this, their 50th anniversary year. So I think they were in it for the long haul, and there's no surprise that Slobodan Milosevic has not caved in. Less disappointment at the weather, really. They're saying that the weather, as a point, it will at some time clear.
Jim and Clancy in Brussels, thanks very much, and thanks to John King at the White House. And once again, when the Pentagon briefing begins, we will go there live, but for now, thanks for being with us. I'm Gene Randall in Washington.
And I'm Natalie Allen in Atlanta. I'll have more news right after this.
Tonight on Larry King Weekend, former Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev gives historical perspective on the crisis in Yugoslavia. Tonight, 9 Eastern on CNN.
At Waddell & Reed, we've learned that everyone has a different reason to do financial planning. Maybe it's tax time.
I think we need a plan here.
Or when retirement is becoming a reality.
I think we need a plan here.
Or when you're beginning to think about saving for college.
I think we need a plan here.
If you think you need a financial plan, it's time to meet with your personal financial advisor at Waddell & Reed. For retirement, college savings, mutual funds, we're the people with a plan for you. Check the white pages for your nearest Waddell & Reed office.
Friday nights, dinner and a movie dishes up a tasty combination. One popular movie. Cool. Two hungry hosts.
Check, please.
And lots of savory dinner conversation. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
I think we're getting into a weird area here.
Dinner and a movie. Friday nights. Delicious television. Only on the Superstation.
If you want to hear more about Oregon State University, come to OSU Nights.
This is the most important comfort feature in a new car. Because if you're not comfortable with the payments, you'll never be comfortable with the car. Well, right now, during the $5 million inventory reduction at Hillsborough Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep, we're offering some incredibly low payments. A great selection of Grand Cherokees from just $225 a month. And we have hundreds of top-quality pre-owned vehicles with payments as low as $79. The $5 million inventory reduction. Hurry, they're selling fast at Hillsborough Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep.
He's been battered. He's been beaten. He's been bruised. But now it's mankind's turn. Brace yourself for the backlash. Sunday, April 25th on pay-per-view. Order and receive a free WWF Attitude hat. Check out WWF.com for details.
CNN Today with Lou Waters and Natalie Allen. Weekdays on CNN.
In limbo and on the brink of collapse, not just the refugees, but the governments they're turned to. Now NATO embarks on a new mission. This precision attack was meant to strike fear into the heart of Belgrade, and just a short time ago, a possible sign of compromise emerged. But it's NATO that has softened its demand. Seen around the world, this is CNN Saturday, and we welcome our international viewers to our continuing coverage of the strike against Yugoslavia. And hello, everyone. I'm Natalie Allen. We have a new development to report in the Kosovo crisis. Less than 1 hour ago, NATO apparently softened a key demand. The military allowance now says it would be willing to send troops into Kosovo before a peace deal is signed. We'll have details of the significance of this offer in a moment, but first, the underlying reason for the renewed diplomatic effort: an urgent need to defuse the increasingly volatile refugee crisis. NATO officials say the calamity grows more grave by the day. An estimated 130,000 Kosovars were forced from the province yesterday alone. At this rate, all Kosovar Albanians could be exiled within 20 days. Time is also the greatest concern at Kosovo's borders. Macedonia says it risks collapsing under the strain of incoming refugees. It is refusing to allow any more to enter. Tens of thousands of refugees are now at Kosovo's borders with nowhere to go and dangerously low supplies of food and water. As conditions deteriorate and the tensions spiral, NATO says it must act to defuse the threats of disease, death, and violence. We have CNN crews stationed at these potential flashpoints along Kosovo's borders. We'll check in at Podgorica, Montenegro, Marina, Albania, and Blace, Macedonia in just a moment. But first, let's go to CNN's Matthew Chance in Skopje, Macedonia. He joins us by telephone. Matthew.
Well, Natalie, a very grim situation on the border between Macedonia and Yugoslavia this evening. The United Nations now says there are at least 65,000 people in this sprawling registration camp where Macedonian officials are trying to process the influx of people from Kosovo. The scene is really very disturbing. We've rarely seen terrible pictures of hardship like this before, perhaps in Kurdistan after the Gulf War, perhaps in Zaire after the Rwandan genocide. Now in the heart of Europe, tens of thousands of Kosovars with very little shelter and very little food, standing out in the cold with literally nowhere to go. There is an aid effort underway. Food's being distributed by local volunteers and international aid groups. Plastic sheeting is being handed out finally to at least some of these people. For the last 3 days, remember, many of them have simply been standing in this very muddy, very cold river valley with absolutely no shelter at all. It's not much different right now, but at least we can say that some aid is now getting through. Natalie?
And Matthew, if Macedonia goes ahead and doesn't allow anyone else in, what happens to those still trying to get out of Kosovo?
Well, really, without the help of Macedonia's authorities or their help in that regard, it's very difficult to see what these people on the other side of the border of Macedonia will do. As we know, they've been, according to their statements, they've been intimidated by the Yugoslav authorities, forced at gunpoint, many of them. This is what they're saying, to leave Kosovo. They've only got two routes out of there. The first is to Albania, and we've seen more than 100,000 refugees go there, and the second route is to Macedonia. Now, the Macedonian authorities say they will let more people through their borders. If they're given guarantees by other countries, they will take refugees off their hands, and some of those guarantees have now come through. The neighbouring country of Greece says it will take 4,000 refugees. Germany has also said it will take refugees. So as these offers of relief come in, the Macedonian authorities say they'll let more people into the country to travel on to their final destination. Natalie?
Matthew Chance in Skopje, Macedonia. NATO is scrambling into action with a humanitarian mission. NATO will send troops into Albania to protect some 170,000 Kosovars who've sought refuge there. Albania's government says it can help refugees only if other countries provide support and supplies. The United Nations relief official told CNN earlier today that an immediate helicopter lift is needed to prevent mass death. The images are no less grim along Kosovo's border with Montenegro. Tens of thousands of refugees have been herded into a small area awaiting permission to cross. Most will not receive it. Montenegro says it can now only accept the most frail refugees and those who will merely pass through to other countries. NATO appears to be adjusting the goals of its mission against Yugoslavia. In a brief statement today, NATO ambassadors say they've now agreed troops could go into Kosovo even without a peace agreement. Until now, NATO said it would only deploy ground troops after a peace agreement was signed. Despite NATO's shift, it's still insisting Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic end his offensive in Kosovo.
Thereafter, as always, we'll be happy. Milosevic has to cease all of his military combat activity in Kosovo. He has to withdraw the forces of the Serb army and special police from Kosovo. And at the same time, he has to provide guarantees for the safety of the refugees. He has to accept and also ensure that the refugees are able to return swiftly to their homes. Those are the three things that we are insisting upon.
We should hear more about this during a Pentagon briefing expected at 1:30 p.m. Eastern today. And up next, a city under fire, bombs blast Yugoslavia's central city, the fallout from Belgrade, and a live report when CNN Saturday continues.
CNN Saturday is brought to you by Invesco. You should know what Invesco knows.
At Invesco, we know that the financial world isn't always as it seems. The big economic picture can always change quickly. And to manage a fund, Invesco knows you need to be on top of the changing picture and know how it might affect you right at home. Invesco, a family of no-load funds. Over 65 years of experience, a global perspective. You should know what Invesco knows.
When you start a pro hockey team in North Carolina, there are several things you'll find useful. Some more useful than others. Nothing else matters unless you have what you need most. That's why 4 out of 5 of the world's largest companies rely on CompuWare. What do you need most? CompuWare, people and software for business applications.
Honey, there's not much time left. Are we ready for the baby? You know, financially.
Well, I wanted it to be a surprise, but I've been planning.
Tell me.
Listen, 7, 9, 15, 21. You see where I'm going?
No.
The lottery. I'm a lucky guy.
Lucky? I'm due in 4 weeks.
Hey, that gives us 4 more chances to win.
Don't be caught unprepared. Ask your financial advisor about the funds of Alliance Capital, the investment professional's choice. Do it now, because later is sooner than you think.
Perfect vehicle for getting in touch with your inner child.
For the first time since Operation Allied Force began 11 days ago, NATO has attacked government buildings in the capital. Overnight, NATO missiles struck 2 key government buildings in central Belgrade. Destroyed were Serbia's Ministry of Affairs and the Yugoslav Ministry of Internal Affairs. A nearby hospital barely escaped the attack. The bombing forced the staff to evacuate its maternity ward. Yugoslav officials say no one was injured in the attacks there at the hospital. These are tense times in Montenegro. The tiny Yugoslav republic is now home to tens of thousands of ethnic Albanian refugees. Compounding the situation, speculation, Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic is planning a takeover of the pro-Western republic. Here's CNN's Mike Hanna on that.
All Montenegro's political parties, including the pro-Belgrade opposition, will resist any attempts at a military takeover by Yugoslav federal troops. That's according to Parliamentary Speaker Svetozar Marovic. But local leaders here remain incensed that federal President Slobodan Milosevic appointed a new military commander in Montenegro without consulting them. Montenegro is supposedly an autonomous republic, part of the Yugoslav Federation.
This is just another contribution to the constitutional and legal disruption practiced by the autocratic regime of Slobodan Milosevic. He did not even notify the Federal Supreme Council. He considers it his right to unilaterally dismiss the commander of the Second Army.
And yet more criticism of what President Đukanović describes as Belgrade's policy of defiance of the West.
It is a policy that has led to a series of defeats. Mr. Milosevic and his followers have brought about the disintegration of our country. They have brought about war in Bosnia and Croatia, lost Serb territory in Krajina and Slovenia, and finally there is the tragedy of Kosovo.
In recent days, Montenegro has come under bombing attacks by NATO, attacks directed at Yugoslav military targets on its territory. It's experienced daily demonstrations in the streets by pro-Belgrade elements and has suffered the influx of tens of thousands of refugees from Kosovo. So far, law and order has been maintained. The Montenegrin government remains firmly in control. And yet it's a tenuous sense of stability, the underlying fear that a single incident, whether spontaneous or planned, could spark off mass civil unrest. Mike Hanna, CNN, Podgorica, Yugoslavia.
And U.S. military officials are holding a briefing this afternoon on the mission against Yugoslavia. CNN's David Enzor joins us now from the Pentagon. David, are we expecting any comment from the Pentagon about this NATO statement that we've heard from Brussels this afternoon?
Natalie, I think the delay in the briefing here may be in part because they want to coordinate and make sure they have the line right on that statement. Officials here don't believe there's anything really new in the statement in the sense that they say that it's been some time now that U.S. officials at least have been saying that what's needed is for Mr. Milosevic to come into line with the principles